Hi, my name is Lori, and I work at the Swamp School. Today we're going to talk about the processes of photosynthesis and respiration of different kinds of plants. Not only plant life, but all life is dependent on these two processes. We'll overview the main parts of the processes, but delve more into the plant as a system and how each part depends on the other. We'll talk about terrestrial plants, desert plants, and wetland plants, and how each type gets the materials they need to stay alive. So let's start learning. Let's review the processes of photosynthesis and respiration. Photosynthesis occurs in the plant's cells that contain chloroplasts, and along with energy absorbed from the sun, carbon dioxide, and water, they produce glucose or sugar and oxygen that's given off by the plant. Respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis and happens in the mitochondria. It needs glucose and oxygen to produce energy for the plant's life processes. The products are energy, carbon dioxide, and water. So, for photosynthesis to occur, plants need water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide. And for respiration to occur, plants need oxygen and glucose or sugar, which is stored in the plant. Where do plants get the reactants to carry out photosynthesis? The energy comes from the sun and is absorbed through the plant tissue, where the chloroplasts take in the energy in a chemical called chlorophyll. All plant cells, except for root cells, have chloroplasts. Root cells don't contain chloroplasts because roots are usually underground and don't perform photosynthesis. The other material needed for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide and water. The water comes from the soil through the roots and from the atmosphere as water gas through the stomata. The stomata are openings in the plant that aid in the exchange of gases to and from the plant. They can open and close depending on the needs of the plant. Stomata is the plural for the cells, while stoma is the single cell. In terrestrial plants, stomata are usually found on the underside of a plant leaf. Now, where do plants get the reactants to carry out respiration? Remember that respiration releases energy needed for life processes. The reactants are oxygen and sugar or glucose, and the products are a chemical called ATP, but we'll refer to it as energy, carbon dioxide, and water. This process happens in the mitochondria of plant cells. Every cell in a living thing contains one or more mitochondria, depending on the type of cell. Terrestrial plants take in oxygen from the atmosphere through the stomata and the roots. A lot of the oxygen that plants need comes from the product of photosynthesis, which is oxygen. So while the plant produces oxygen during photosynthesis, they also need oxygen to respirate. However, think about the roots that do not perform photosynthesis, but still need oxygen for respiration. Of course, roots need energy like all other parts of the plant. In terrestrial plants, roots get oxygen from the openings in the soil. These openings in the soil, or pores, occur when critters like worms and such burrow their way around in our soil. Carbon dioxide and water vapor are released through the stomata and the roots as needed by the plant. So that's all well and good, except when we talk about the conditions of wetland plants or desert plants. Plants need space, sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to survive. Desert plants lack water and have an overabundance of sunlight. Wetland plants have an overabundance of water, but lack oxygen in the soil, because wetland soils are usually inundated or saturated with water during the growing season of the plants. Of course, the growing season is the most demanding time for energy for the plant. So how do these processes of life happen without water or oxygen? Natural selection, that's how. Charles Darwin's finch beaks are a perfect example. The beaks of finches adapted to the type of food that was available on the different islands where they lived. Wetland and desert plants have adapted so well to their conditions that they're the only kind of plants that can live there. There are even specific names given to them. Desert plants are called xerophytes. Wetland plants are called hydrophytes, and terrestrial plants are called mesophytes. Just to give you an idea of how these specialized plants get their materials they need to produce energy for life processes, I'll name a few adaptations that are common to desert and wetland plants. Remember, desert plants need more water for photosynthesis and some protection from the sun. For the purpose of reducing the amount of water that leaves the plant, desert plants have a thick, waxy coating called a cuticle that keeps water from leaving the plant through the surface. This coating also helps reduce the effect of the hot sun on the plant. Desert plants also have needle-like leaves as opposed to wide, spread-out leaves, because needles have a lower surface area to lose water from, and the needles are also more effective in shading the plant from sunlight. The roots of desert plants spread out close to the surface of the soil, so they're more capable of absorbing water during rainfall events. Now let's talk about wetland plants. Their roots need oxygen to respirate. While in most cases the oxygen produced by photosynthesis takes care of the plant's oxygen needs, the roots don't photosynthesize. Normally, as in terrestrial plants, the oxygen would come from the pores in the soil, but in the case of wetland plants, their soil is usually inundated, especially during the growing season when a plant uses the most energy. So hydrophytes have adapted ways to get oxygen to their roots. Some roots, like desert plant roots, are very close to or actually on the surface of the soil. Other roots spring up from the main root system and emerge from underground. Some plants have tissue that contains arrhythmia, which are enlarged pores in the stems and leaves. These take in extra gases from the atmosphere and through diffusion force oxygen into the roots. So there you have it, an overview of photosynthesis and respiration as it pertains to the individual parts of a plant. We discussed terrestrial plants or mesophytes, desert plants or xerophytes that have adapted to very dry conditions, and wetland plants or hydrophytes that have adapted to an anaerobic conditions. Please visit your favorite swamp today. Signing off now.